You know, when we think about World War II, we often picture the battlefields of Europe and the Pacific. But there was another war happening, one that's just as important to understand. It's the story of a nation experiencing this incredible, powerful unity, and at the exact same time, deep and painful division.
See, this is the idea that really defines the whole era. While the world was watching America fight for freedom and democracy abroad,
Another, totally different battle was raging right here at home. A fight against its own prejudice, its own inequality. So what happens when a country finds itself at war with the world and with itself? Well, that's the story we're going to get into.
Okay, first up, mobilizing for total war. We're going to see how a nation that was absolutely crippled by the Great Depression somehow transformed itself into what became known as the arsenal of democracy.
I mean, you have to remember, before the war, America was on its knees. The Great Depression meant idle factories, massive unemployment, things were bleak. But the war effort, it completely flipped the switch. It didn't just end the Depression, it sparked this unbelievable economic boom that turned the nation into a manufacturing superpower.
And this mobilization wasn't just about industry, it was human. Just look at this number. Over the course of the war, a staggering 50 million men registered for the draft. Now 10 million were ultimately inducted, but that sheer scale reshaped the entire country.
So you might be wondering, how did the government get big business on board with all this? Simple. It guaranteed profits for factories that switched over to wartime production. And the result was this massive boom. Corporate profits just skyrocketed, with some businesses seeing increases as high as 350%.
But behind these massive numbers were real people, under just immense pressure. This diary entry from General Eisenhower, wow, it's a really powerful reminder of that. When he found out his own father had died, his duty to the war came first. It's just a raw, personal look at the profound sacrifices that were demanded of absolutely everyone.
So this massive mobilization, it didn't just happen in factories and on military bases. In our second section, we're going to see how it totally transformed the home front, reshaping the very fabric of American life. Now, one of the biggest social shifts involved women entering the workforce. We've all seen the Rosie the Riveter posters, right? The government's campaign promised patriotic duty and financial freedom. But the reality for so many women was, well, it was a lot more complicated. They were often paid less than men and had to face this grueling double day, a full shift at the plant and then another full shift of housework and childcare, usually with very little government support.
And you know, while we picture Rosie working on an airplane, that really wasn't the whole picture. Most women in the labor force actually took over other factory jobs or filled office positions. And as white women moved into these higher-paying roles, many African-American women were then able to leave domestic service for the very factory jobs that had been left behind.
The entire country mobilized. It was a total collective effort. Civilians had ration booklets for everything from gas to sugar. People planted victory gardens in their backyards, they held scrap drives where kids would sacrifice their metal toys, and they purchased over $185 billion in war bonds.
And that idea of collective effort brings us right to the heart of our story. Section 3, Patriotism and Prejudice. This is where we have to confront that central paradox. A nation fighting for freedom all over the world while denying it to many of its own citizens.
Just think about the Tuskegee Airmen. These African-American pilots had to serve in segregated units, and yet they flew with incredible distinction. They faced racism inside their own military, but their skill was so undeniable that figures like First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt made a point to take a very public flight with one of the pilots, just to prove their capabilities to the world. And you see, their fight was bigger than just the war in Europe. It really embodied this idea called the WWII campaign. This was a powerful call from the African-American community for two victories. V for victory against the Axis powers abroad, and a second V for victory against racism right here at home. And in a similar way, the Navajo Code Talkers made this unique and absolutely vital contribution. These were Navajo Marines who used their native language to create an unbreakable code that was essential to winning battles across the Pacific. I mean, think about that. A culture that the U.S. government had once tried to suppress became one of its most powerful secret weapons.
But the embrace of one minority culture stands in just stark, tragic contrast to the treatment of another. After Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order led to the forced removal of 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry from the West Coast. And get this, 2/3 of them were American citizens. They were imprisoned in these desolate, hastily built internment camps.
And here is the absolutely devastating truth of that policy.
After all of that, not a single interned Japanese American was ever convicted of sabotage or espionage. Not one. And these racial tensions just exploded in other parts of the country too, like in Los Angeles during the Zoot Suit riots. Young Mexican Americans who wore these really distinctive suits were accused of being unpatriotic because the suits violated wartime fabric rationing. Tensions just boiled over, and mobs of sailors and civilians attacked them in the streets, injuring more than 100 people.
So all of this, it all leads us to our final section, number 4, America's complicated victory. Because the war left a legacy that wasn't just about global power, but also about these deep and unresolved social divisions.
You can really see this dual legacy pretty clearly. On the one hand, America came out of the war as an undisputed global superpower, no question. But on the other hand, the conflict laid bare all the country's deep social fissures. And yet, it was right there, in those struggles, in things like the WWII campaign and the fight for basic dignity, that the seeds of the post-war civil rights movement were really sown.
So in the end, the home front was absolutely essential to winning the war, but it also revealed a nation that was profoundly at war with itself. And that leaves us with a question that still resonates today. What does this complicated victory tell us about America's ongoing, never-ending fight for its own ideals?